I'm Antifa, and so's my wife. Ghost of Yotei did not release without its controversies back in October. The bigger, more successful content creators out there really made it a focus. The actress that plays the main character did reveal on social media the direction of their political affiliation. As with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, the boycott bus was being revved, so not everyone is going to be getting to this game. How did I deal with the problem? I switched it out to the Japanese language. This is the voice actress. And if having to clap eyes on the face of the individual in the capture role is still just too much for you, which I kind of get, you can be safe in the knowledge that the majority of the cool armor sets are totally full mask. The pushback on that solution is that there will be some storylines and the conclusion of the game which sort of obeys the blueprint for a lot of AAA Sony releases of late. You might be thinking, it's just a social media post, I don't know what all the fuss was about. The best way to frame it, if this individual was coming from the opposite political direction with their social media content, they wouldn't have even got the position, I imagine. And if you are UK based, you are far more likely to have a knock on the door from the authorities than an interview date. Watch Dogs Legion IRL. My name is of course Couch Coop, and let's get started. I played loads of Rise of the Ronin and AC Shadows. Some of those aforementioned creators also boycotted that Ubisoft gem. Ghost 1 is also one of my favourite games of all time over on 8th gen, and I do want to talk about that director's cut. I will be showing you some of that Iki Island DLC, which is all on extra, all comes with that upgraded version of the game and is thoroughly recommended. Let's actually focus for the first time in the video what's actually going on screen. And you will notice that that horse and rider camera angle's been pulled back massively. It's like John Ford came in and went, no, we need bigger horizons, more epic visuals when travelling on that horse. And sure enough, that is the effect achieved here. It's quite spectacular. The camera almost flawlessly adapts to the speed and brings you in close and intimate for the slower walk in. It's one of the first noticeable things about this sequel.
Yōtei 6人衆のことを嗅ぎ回っているそうだな。
I also want to mention the Japanese voice acting on all of the NPCs and characters within the game. None of it is lackluster or low effort. Excellent casting and marrying up of some really good voices, some of which are complete comedy gold. They haven't even mucked up the mouth synchronization so it doesn't look like an overdub. This has got to be one of my first Western games I've happily sat in the Japanese language mode. This guy fakes death, tries to run off. I get a shot on the back of his ankle. Not a single trophy was given, annoyingly. Also noticed no bow slowdown at this point. Very early footage. Let's kind of cover the upgrades to the engine itself, or what I have noticed, and there's far more sort of avian action going on, loads more birds flying around. The mist seems to be extremely detailed, and of course all the plant movement with the wind. All this talk of engine upgrade and camera angle change, let's just have a look at Ghosts 1. Now, some of you might have seen my Doom Eternal review that was part of that list for Dark Ages. Now, that sits on the SSD. It was a full-blown PlayStation 5 upgrade, and it's the same thing with Director's Cut. The game is so crisp on that PlayStation 5 base level machine. The frames are so smooth against its 8th generation equivalent. I thoroughly recommend looking at this. I partner it with the Death Stranding Director's Cut, put them both in a singular video. So both of those games now have sequels and they all are sitting on 9th generation, which is great news. Here is a brief side by side of that camera change on the position of the protagonists themselves. Moving parts and detail-wise, we also see a lot more flowing garments and loose material with Yotei. The games also don't look a million miles apart. Remember, we are looking at the PS5 director's cut of Ghosts 1. So dropping your weapons, picking up a weapon is a theme. We're going to get into that in more detail when we cover the actual combat. The load times need to get a special mention. They are amazing. When you travel to different camps or go to vendors, it's almost instant. I remember them pushing that as some of the advertising, but it's extremely impressive. It needs to be, because you're flip-flop flamming around with all of these individuals almost constantly throughout the entirety of the whole game. The game also loves using the touchpad and those groundbreaking motion controls that we first saw on the Wii in 1998. My theory on this is that Sucker Punch finished the game, right? They took it to the Sony executives and said, look, it's ready. They were like, we'll come back to you. Then there was an email that went, why have you not pushed our amazing controller with that awesome touchpad? That's the only edge we actually have on Microsoft at the moment, is the pad. And they're like, oh God, what are we going to do? We're just going to have to put some like light and a fire, maybe a bit of paint in. Yeah, it feels a little bit forced. On the subject of forcing things on people, I have not told you what mode we are looking at Ghost of Yotei in. There's 3 options. There's even an RT option. When you have a little guess in your head, those frames haven't been too bad, is quality. Full-blown quality. Whole video, loved it. And joy of joys, they kept the bamboo cutting mini game in, which I have heard no one praise in my entire life on this planet. We are just going to cover some of its awesome locations, and I promise we will be getting to combat soon. Swords will be a clanging, trust me. It doesn't feature a dynamic season system, which I thought they may lean into. What it does is offer sections of the map that dictate a season. Shadow sports a full-blown winter, summer, autumn rotation on familiar locations that completely metamorphosize. That can't be ignored. That's a hell of a thing to have on an open world game. But these vistas are a hell of a thing to have. Those black lines come in, the aspect ratio very much takes on that Red Dead Redemption 2 film cinema aspect that they would put on the horseback traveling. I think in certain sections this is one of the best 9th looking generation video games to come out this year, and not fluctuating on frames and having a very high detail quality mode does make you feel like you're getting the full-blown AAA treatment. It isn't a complete non-offender, however. Some of the one-on-one boss fights, particularly fire on the ground and numerous enemies to fight, may hit that resolution a bit. You see some dynamic change, but nothing really disturbs you too much. And as you know, I am a sucker for photo modes. This one's incredible, but the majority of this footage is actually mostly in-game, because you don't have all of that UI cluttering when things are slower and you're not in combat. And I also feel the effects, the weather, the animation on the characters just feels a bit more natural. And again, testament to an amazing in-game mode against its actual photo mode. So I got stuck, right? I don't mean with something that happened in the game, something I couldn't work out, a boss I couldn't beat. No, I found an area which you had to explore to sort of find some NPC who was lost, something like that. It's like a marshland, and it really showcases the reflections and that ground-hugging mist. Bros, I was like, I'm screwed. How am I going to play the rest of the game? I was in here for hours, soaking it up. It's one of the first, most visually striking areas. You have these things called dueling trees, which essentially have quite a tough enemy guarding them. There's normally a cool reward, but the tree itself, the whole ambience, it cranks the music up, really knows what it's doing with delivering a flawless visual experience. I'm sorry to keep hammering the point home. This is not a photo mode. This is in-game, me swinging the camera around. So just watch out for the swamp. Don't get bogged down in the swamp like I did. Coop, mate, come on. Come on. Yep. Okay. Alright. Alright. Those dragonfly noises, though. Okay, let's get into the combat meta. The two block statuses are your standard clang and your brackets get good timed parry. Combat buttons are still on the face of the pad, hard and fast, square and triangle. L2 is freed up for the range, and of course R2 is to pick up the swords that are dropped on the battlefield and the empty sake jars. We'll get to it. You are very quickly given a set of dual swords which you can switch to in real time, again via that R2 button, and there's 4 main weapons to be unlocked in the game. 3 of them you're going to see in this video. Also, the quick weapon projectile is over on R1 and you're given some talcum powder as a first step. Not as dramatic as the Kuni blades, some might say. Enemy attacks come in 3 forms of warning: the classic red/orange, gotta dodge out the way. Then you have the clang prompt, which is the silver sort of blue star, but we also have a yellow icon, which means you need to hold down triangle and get your sword ready for a mini version of that standoff mechanic. If you don't make that in time, you will drop your own sword, which forces you to run around like a lunatic and find the damn thing. It does stack up group attacks quite aggressively, which I really like. A lot of games like this fall into some problems when you've got a lot of people on the screen almost waiting, in inverted commas, to fight you. You also see it in low budget kung fu movies. This throws as many attacks in as it can. It feels very fast, very ferocious, and the talc is quite often lifesaver. What I was initially concerned about is that every group you sort of go up to or camp, it then initiates the standoff prompt, but you can ignore it. And I was thinking, have they got rid of some of the classic crouch and stealth long grass gameplay that we saw in Ghost 1? And they totally haven't. Giving you some nice big rich bases to sort of deconstruct, peel away at and snipe people from a rope. It's pretty cool on the sneak front still. It is also really awesome on the gore front as well. Notice that blood is getting washed downstream and there is limb amputation. I've only noticed it being an arm, however. I want to just cast a future prediction here, which is a little bit depressing. You know when you see like a big Hollywood franchise, maybe it's from the 80s or 90s, let's look at like Predator or even Terminator 1. The more popular they get, the more the marketeers want to increase the scope of audience. And one of the first things they do is remove that R-rated material on sequels or surrounding IPs. That new Predator film is a PG-13. I have a horrible feeling this might start happening to a lot of AAA games, and Ubisoft, along with all of their massive unignorable faults, have kept amazing amounts of gore in their video games, and Sucker Punch have followed suit. Let's all just touch a bit of wood, no jokes please, and thank the gods of gore. Can we talk about the wolf? Yes, we can, because it is an integral part of some of its combat message. You can get that thing involved in your standoffs, and if you throw sake jars at people, you can open up the perks enough to instigate that wolf to come and attack everyone. There are quite a few mini quests and cool storylines to look at within that wolf section. It isn't ignored or tacked on at all, and it's probably one of the cooler elements of the sequel. You find these dens, and the wolf will take you to an enemy camp, and the transition period, you're chasing this wolf through this amazing map. The music plucks up. By the way, you can jump on the horse. I thought these were better than that reach down to the flowers thing on the intro to the original game. The wolf will also give you a second wind on death in combat, which is, yes, as cool as it sounds. Now you've got accustomed to that dynamic camera that we see in Yotei, let's just swing back to Ghost 1 to see how that does change things in combat. It's pretty locked, and it's also quite close to camera. I do think Yotei does improve the dramatics and the cinematography of being involved in combat, but Ghost 1 is still ridiculously good, and for some reason it feels a bit rawer. Those attacks seem a bit more closer together, both from the enemy and the delivery from yourself. One of the things to notice about that footage is that the enemies are throwing a lot more at me than they are at this stage in Yotei. Now the reason for that is I haven't opened up much, so they are only matching what I'm bringing to the fight. It's really easy in this game to get stagnated with all of the side quests and not pursue the weapon development quest lines. I recommend you do it as soon as possible, because getting the big staff and the heavy sword in really mixes stuff up perfectly. There is a gun, which is something you're not shown in this review, but we are given a very sturdy and handy longbow, which acts like an amazing sniper rifle. It can also force enemies to drop their weapon and penetrate most types of armor. So the projectile stuff is there early, it's just not in the gunpowder form. Ronin, Rise of the Ronin, goes straight to pistols like really quickly, and it's okay, it's just a little bit un-samurai for me. Check out this combustion. This is why R2 is so important. Okay, sets and equipment. One of the major draws for me in the original Ghost game was seeing some of that excellent armor. We are looking at the Dragonfly set. It's stage 1. Cosmetic variation on the sets comes in upgrading them at the blacksmith. So you can have something that looks a little bit different at the start of its journey through upgradesmanship. Upgradesmanship, lol, that's a sub for that word. Here is the fully upgraded version of that armor, and it does make you jump through a few hoops just to get the set in the first place, but the upgrading after that isn't too difficult, thankfully. But yeah, time pit confirmed. The weapons themselves can be actually perked up, so you can have some moves on instigating a double button prompt, but you can also get a standard edition set my blade alight move, which goes crazy and is handled incredibly well within engine. I do love how the fire and sparks look in this game. Getting the heavy sword, being able to combat the big dudes properly, and the weight and gravity involved in the animations is really awesome. Swinging that thing around when it's on fire and pruning the limbs of the enemies doesn't really get too boring. We are also at that stage where you need to match weakness of what the enemy is wielding at you, and they never all have the same standard weapon. Rise of Ronin did this incredibly through the stance system, but this offers it on weapon variation. Can we have a look at some cool stuff, please? Yes, check out this one-on-one fight and the set I get for completion. Remember, I had to run around that entire map with some bells jingling, working out which direction the other jingling was coming from. Yeah. Holy crap. Holy crap, look at the horns. This has also got a die on it, so you can have variants on the upgraded armor through a lot of the vendors offering some different colors or designs. But this is just one of the more beautiful sets I clapped eyes on so far in the game. This game is 100% going to get spoken about at the end of the year for my GOTY nominations. Is it better than its original? On a technical prowess and visually, yes. Some people are not going to like that story, however, and a lot of people are a bit gutted to see the back of Jin. But I don't think Ghost 1 is going anywhere anytime soon, and if that's one message I want to get across with the video is if you haven't played the original game, go and have a look at that director's cut. We do also have a new game plus patch coming through for Yotei, so as with all of my other GOTY nominations, I will be re-looking at it briefly as we come up to the end of December. Yotei is a total recommend from me for 2025. Despite its controversies, you would be missing out by boycotting this video game. My name was, of course, Couch Coop, and I look forward to seeing you down there.